Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Special Committee on COVID Response Efficacy. I would like to ask Representative Ebel to lead us in the pledge, please. Just to remind everyone, this bipartisan committee is tasked with investigating and evaluating the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The committee will function as science-based fact-finding review, specifically acquiring comprehensive, accurate data and all related information pertaining thereto. Areas of particular focus will include the administration of federal guidance, acceptance of federal funds, and implementation of emergency use authorization and vaccination efforts. A report will be issued outlining the committee's findings and the impact on New Hampshire. Today's meeting is to discuss a draft report and go over that so that a final report can be submitted. Representative Ware, I know you've made some changes already to the draft report that we've received. You have suggested changes. If you would like to go over those, and if anybody else has anything they would like to say, please feel free.
Yes, do we have that? Yeah.
I don't. Can you send it via email? Special committee?
Okay, yes.
Or do you want to just go over as we're going through this? I think we should go over each section individually and then suggest changes so that everyone has a chance to discuss what they feel needs to be changed, or if there's any opposing opinions or things that needed to be added, etc. So just
let me
yeah, Representative People.
I think it would be helpful for Representative Belcher, just as a starting point, to kind of outline his thought process, anything he might want to say about the drafting of this,
Sure.
just to sort of introduce it.
Yeah, and I think this should be a pretty informal hearing so that we can just have like a conversation amongst ourselves, and so please.
Do we have an email that's to our
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for asking me to introduce the draft report. This was a significant process to get this draft completed, relying on a combination of input from the committee, trying to break it out into different sections that would make sense in order to be reasonably comprehensive while not unnecessarily repetitive. Spent a lot of time bouncing ideas for specific language. So we have the breakdown is 3 major sections, with each section containing multiple subsections. The first section being the introduction section, the acknowledgments, which is basically just a broad overview outline and sentiments around what we have seen and the way that we have undertaken this evaluation, noting for such things that we're not undertaking this with an eye toward being unreasonable. We want to understand what happened as it happened, what was known at the time, not just utilizing hindsight, which should be 2020. But giving people the benefit of the fact that there was a lot of doubt, uncertainty, and fear involved in this whole process. Outlining our mission, a summary of findings, which really is just a brief breakdown of the findings as far as our mission statement goes, relating to efficacy, what efficacy means, what the goals were. A brief note on the executive after action report, which notes that the after action report has certain utility in certain areas, especially things like some communications and intergovernment functions. But it's also not exactly scientifically oriented, so it does have limited utility in certain other areas. Major section 2, policy areas, goes through subsections of setting goals, talks about how goals were set, what was testified to the committee as far as what the goals were at different times during the pandemic period. Section B, the level of disruption that the state's actions cause to individuals, so individual citizens and residents of the state of New Hampshire. Item C, the level of economic disruption that resulted from these actions. D, education, which is pretty broad, encompassing the fact that we, as a state, perhaps not as a state, but more as local entities, shut down schools for extended periods of time, that there was conflicting basis for reopening. Section E takes a brief look at the executive, legislative, and judicial functioning during the period of time during the pandemic, especially the most significant period of government actions, which would have been during the 2020 to 2021, mid 2021 period of time. Section F deals with different levels of government, the integration, cooperation, and communications. Major section 3 deals with specific measures that were taken by the government to attempt mitigation of these of the pandemic and of the virus. Subsections A talks about social distancing, the various testimony we've received, various scientific evidence and opinion as well that we've received on it. Section B on masking, again, the various testimony, evidence, opinion that we've received on it, and brief analysis. Section C, orders relating to anti-assembling and closures of various things from businesses to houses of worship and the like. Section D deals with vaccines and the mRNA prophylactic technology that we've had various testimony as to whether those should technically be called vaccines or not. I didn't intend to weigh in on whether they are, so I wanted to make sure it was all encompassing. E, having to do with the equity measures that were taken by the state of New Hampshire government. F, on engineering controls, and actually I found this to be one of the most interesting items that we saw, and perhaps one of the most important recommendations going forward, regarding the fact that public health authorities seem to be reticent to recommend a high dollar policy that might have had a great degree of success just because it was a high dollar policy, and trying to solve in the future policy decisions regarding spending money when it may actually be necessary to do so. And finally, G, the ongoing impacts on the health of New Hampshire residents, as was recommended by the committee last week in our Friday session, making recommendations or asking our federal delegation perhaps to look at ongoing study and funding for long COVID and the vaccine injured. So that's the overall outline. And I'm happy to go through it bit by bit if we want to do that.
Very informal.
Madam Chair and committee members, first of all, I just want to say again that this has been quite a journey, I think, for all of us. I think that we came to this committee probably with quite different ideas and beliefs as to how the COVID response rolled out. We've heard a lot of testimony. I've talked to my fellow, and I just want to say that I can see that there was an huge amount of effort that Representative Belcher put in drafting this. It very much reflects his opinion of the testimony that we received. I've talked to the other members. They were not able to come today, unfortunately. I would just say, as a general statement, we have many, many points of disagreement with the report. I'm willing, we can walk through this and look at the language. Honestly, I feel like it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to come to a consensus in a way that we would be able to sign off on it, because I think we just basically disagree with a lot of the statements and conclusions. So just for what it's worth, we can say that I think there's some. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I just want to keep it at a respectful
Yeah.
level, and just, I wanted to say that on behalf of the Democratic members of the committee.
Thank you. And Representative Merchant did send out an email to the members, which I appreciate. Let me ask a question on the introduction. Is that an issue of this? I mean, I'm just trying to find out. I know Representative Weary's made some changes that he felt because he thought, it was more. Representative Weary, why don't you talk to us about some of the changes? I haven't seen that email come through yet. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, my apologies. The system has not been kind to me this morning.
Okay, so I'll give you a few more minutes. Representative Polozov.
I have a question to the chair. If you could outline the process that we are engaging right now, our deadlines and process. We heard about signing off on report. Is it a process that is ahead of us? And I understand that there are some grammatical suggestions and some undertones that we want to change in the report, but I also think it's important that we will finish with the report so that we don't miss a deadline. And there was some different opinions about when the deadline is and if we are able to continue our meetings after today. So if you have any information on that.
I did not check with the Speaker's office, but our report did not have a deadline in there, and it is a special committee and a standing committee. So I don't think that today is a deadline. We are all elected officials until, I think, December 3rd. So as elected officials, we can still function, I think, in a capacity of producing a report. I can double check with the Speaker's office on that quickly. But I think it's important that we go through this, and I know that you've made some changes, Representative Weary, that you felt that were necessary for the tone of this report. But first off, I think that we need to recognize that Representative Belcher taking on this under task. I mean, we all have our biases. So when we write things, we have to understand that happens. And the tremendous amount of work that he has put into this to get us to this point, I think really needs to be acknowledged.
Definitely.
So we now have something that we can work with. So I think, if we can go through maybe section by section, let's just look at the introduction, and then if you have notes on different sections on where you think that there's problems, or maybe Representative Weary already has suggestions that may be amenable to, we can hear those. I think it's important that we hear what we hear what the issues are and what suggestions are already out there to be made, so.
So, you know, I agree with you that this was an enormous task, and I also thank Representative Belcher for taking it on and putting it all together. We got it, I mean, I'm not causing fault, I'm just saying we got it late.
Yep.
It was an extremely long and comprehensive document. I did not make specific comments on the language because there was just so many points of disagreement. I wasn't
Okay.
like in the process of editing it. I mean, I can look at the introduction again now. You know, like, I guess what I'm saying is I read through the thing, the document. I didn't go back through and make notes. I just sort of paid attention. I think obviously we can agree on the mission. I'll look at the introduction again, but I think after that, that's where we begin to start to separate. Structurally, usually what I've seen is like the text and then like bullet points with a bunch of specific findings. And then after that, you have a recommendation section and then it goes on from there. I've seen much more footnoting, you know, references. We're going to need some appendices. Just technically speaking, you talk about the people that came and testified. You know, that part of it, regardless of whether we agree to it or not, I would recommend that it be beefed up if possible. So anyway, just with that sort of overview.
Any thoughts from the committee? Representative Belcher?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate all of the comments that have been made. I just wanted to outline, because we did have a discussion in a broad sense about what the report ought to perhaps look like and include this past Friday. I did very much try to be cognizant of all of those things and including some things that I really went out of my way to try to make amenable to all parties. That I've not included any names of persons. References are by title or by branch only. Nobody in the report is disparaged or thrown under the bus in any way. There are no recommendations for punitive measures or actions or anything of that sort. It's all forward-looking. In all circumstances, it was considered what was known at the time, trying very hard not to apply what we might know now to judge actions at the time based on what they may not have known at the time. We agreed, I think, as a committee this past Friday that when the state is going to be adopting any sort of official state position, when it comes down, especially from the federal level or anywhere else, that we really ought to be putting in the effort to independently verify that guidance before we put our stamp as a state on it and our legitimacy as a state government on it. It is noted many times that a lot of our response was dictated, guided, or otherwise marshaled by federal authorities and not by individuals or any parties or branches of government within the state. And lastly, the findings for long COVID and vaccine injury that we discussed were also included in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wary. Just please jump in.
A question to Representative Ferry. Thank you for sending the draft. Is it a version with accepted changes? Because I don't necessarily see on my system, but my system is different.
Yeah, yes, it is with I thought it would be easier for this committee rather than I can send if someone wants, yeah, I can do that. But
Representative Wary, because we're not seeing anything in red, because obviously, can you discuss your changes, please, for us? It looks like you put the mission first, which I think is important.
bear with me for a second while I open up. I did I can send a track changes version, but it's pretty messy. But so basically, I did move the mission to the top of the report. I thought that was best, and I thought I've particularly noted in my reviews of the videos early on before I joined the committee, as well as after I joined the committee, substituting for Representative Lekis, that you open up every meeting with this mission statement, and I think it's important for reviewers of this report to understand this specific mission. So I thought it would be best to move that, and then I included the metrics that just in terms of the hours of public hearings and the documented thousands of pages, that sort of thing, and include that. And then I identified, the composition of the committee, and then I listed with the chair and the vice chair first, and then I just simply put in alphabetical order.
Representative Wary, there is one change, and I didn't catch it in looking at Representative Belcher's, but it's Kelly Potenza and not Nikki Carter. So Kelly Potenza should be listed instead of Nikki McCarter.
Okay.
Just
Kelly is listed below. So Kelly, Representative Potenza is listed below in the second column, if you look at that.
so you'll need to remove Nikki McCarter.
Okay.
So there's got to be somebody missing somewhere. Please.
Madam Chair, if I just if this is the same, and I think it probably is what I had just included all persons, even substitutes that were on the committee during any period of time. If we prefer not to, that's fine as well.
Just the official members should be on there, I
Okay.
think is important.
And if I may, real quick, on page 7, Representative Wary, near the bottom, there is an odd paragraph ending. I just want to make sure that's addressed before I forget about it and move
Okay.
on from it. Thank you.
Okay, on the copy I sent, let me get to that.
Yeah, so on the mission, Nikki Carter and please.
Yeah, there are 12 names, so once we remove Nikki McCarter, we are good, baby.
And Representative Wary, I mean, we can always put somewhere Alicia Lekis and then replaced with Representative Wary. Is that because that was official? But Representative McCarter was only a substitute for a day. So, did you understand that, Representative Wary?
If I wasn't originally appointed,
So what we would like to say is have Representative Lekis there, and then when she was no longer on the committee, replaced with Representative Wary, so that people understand that she was the official member, and then you took over as an official member, but we're replacing her.
I leave it up to Representative Belker to
Okay,
make that adjustment if he would, please.
right, because then you did become an official member of the committee. So.
That was my understanding, yes.
Yes, Representative Belcher, I think, is talking about page 7. If you go to the fourth or fifth line from the bottom, you can see that paragraph is not finished there, unfinished sentence. Okay.
I'm just noting what Representative Merchant said about calling out the membership situation. I mean, you could do that, I guess, but I think that all of us who did not come had a very specific conflict, and we all knew heading into this that Fridays were going to be really difficult for us. And, you know, if you want to put that in there, if we're not signing off on the thing, that's your prerogative, but it seems like an unnecessary jab.
Representative Weary took that out. So in the new draft, it's been removed. Representative Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as a quick sort of formatting question, I would note that the last edit of the version that I had put out that was distributed yesterday was ultimately a bit longer in length because there was each section sort of had its own page, or it was each section started on a new page. Whereas this new one we're looking at right now, provided by Representative Weary, it retains the older formatting where it's shorter because it's not broken up in that manner. Is there a preference that we have for which way we ought to go with that? I thought better of it, and when I edited it, maybe each section starting on its own page, but I just was curious.
It's cleaner that way. I agree with each section on its own page, especially when you're flipping through an index. But, you know, listening to what Representative Ebel said and Representative Merchant citing some of our findings and putting in footnotes and having addendums should probably be put into this report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to address that, and I don't disagree that it would ideally have all of those things. The difficulty for me was we have literally thousands of pages of documents in our committee records, and without the staffing that somebody like Congress has, it was just an impossible task for me to try to cite, which is why where there was any necessary, really necessary citation, I simply referenced the committee record.
Again, it's up to you how you guys want to handle this. I mean, if you're quoting in I mean, I believe we just had one environmental engineer here, and if a lot of what you're quoting is what he said, then you could reference him. Some of the other statements that were made came directly from, say, Attorney Siri or Dr. Kuldorf as an individual. I think we could reference those. We could at least have a hyperlink to the ARR report. Just, you know, maybe if it's supposed to be somewhat scientific document or summarizing science, it would be good to have some of those things. But of course, we can have an appendix. That's what I've done before.
Right.
And we can list some of the documents and maybe just references to them. I appreciate what you're saying, Representative Belcher. It'd be a tremendous amount of work, but maybe we could add a few more things, or you could, than what we have right now.
All right. So I guess on Representative Weary's report, did you make any changes to acknowledgements to that section? Okay. be the first one.
So what I did.
Put on your mic, please.
What I did with respect to the acknowledgements is I took much of what was written, but kind of reworded it for readability. And
It looks like you shortened it a little bit.
I did.
Okay, why don't I just read that section on what you changed and see how it sounds to folks and get an opinion. At the onset of this report, it is important to recognize the unprecedented nature of the COVID-19 pandemic. Initially, extraordinarily little was known about the virus. The potential degree of lethality and the rate of transmissibility were being reported as extremely high. Throughout society, there was a palpable fear that was exacerbated by the media's constant reporting of the number of deaths that occurred due to COVID-19. Indeed, COVID-19 and fear became twin viruses infecting society. Because of the threat of the virus and the growing sense of fear and dread, New Hampshire state officials no doubt felt an enormous responsibility to protect its citizens and to keep Granite Staters alive and healthy. To this end, the governor formed a committee of top state leaders from several branches of the state government to chart a path forward to contain the spread of the novel virus. A well-known risk mitigation approach for hazard prevention, the Swiss cheese model, was enacted to mitigate the spread of the virus. Decisions had to be made quickly, oftentimes, and I don't know if oftentimes is one word, but should be separated, with minimal and or conflicting information, and the pressures and challenges of making such decisions were enormous. Ultimately, the decision by the committee and this approach were arguably prudent measures to protect the people of New Hampshire. In undertaking a review of these actions to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 virus, this House committee recognizes that decisions made during the pandemic were done under immense pressure with the information available at the time. Accordingly, this committee has endeavored to determine how New Hampshire can do better next time, rather than indiscriminately second-guessing the decisions made with a 20/20 hindsight. Furthermore, this committee also recognizes that New Hampshire had a much lower mortality rate in comparison to other states. On behalf of the people of New Hampshire, we feel compelled to express appreciation to many officials, elected leaders, and New Hampshire citizens who made difficult decisions under difficult circumstances to see New Hampshire through the other side of the pandemic. It is the decision and genuine efforts of these many people for which the Granite State owes a debt of gratitude. We also extend our thanks to members of the public testifying before our committee, including Dr. Jordan Vaughn, the Honorable Betty Gay, Attorney Aaron Seary, Dr. Kuldorf, Patricia Tilley, Commissioner Caswell, Director Buxton, Commissioner Edelblut, and Dr. Chan, and many other citizens who provided valuable information and offered unique perspectives. Having made these acknowledgments, this report now returns to the committee's mission to carefully review the decisions made and evaluate the actions taken to identify what we might have done differently to better protect the overall health and well-being of the people of New Hampshire. I think that is well done.
It carries with it an acknowledgement of extreme circumstances and the high degree of work that the folks in the executive branch, frankly, did, and in the municipalities to get us where we were. So, I mean, I'll read through it again, but yeah.
Right, and I think even in Representative Belcher's, and my original thing was we wanted to make sure that everyone understood that we're looking at this as in hindsight, that we weren't living through that and we weren't dealing with that, and we have to be very thankful and grateful. So,
Well, and I think we could say something about, this is being done to the best of our abilities, recognizing the limitations of our committee and staffing and whatever. We could also say something like that, but whatever.
Okay.
I think it has a good tone.
I concur. Representative Polzoff.
So, suggest correction. We list titles for most of the mentioned people, but not for Patricia Tilly. And quick search shows that I think she is a associate commissioner. So we
No,
can add that title
I
to
think
her
that's
name.
right. And I think if we put their full names, like, I don't know what Dr. Koldor's full name is, but, yeah.
So, yeah, so we need to fix that, put Associate Commissioners, Patricia Tilly, and then it would be Dr. Martin Kuldoff if we're putting in the full names.
Yeah, Taylor Caswell. I
Right.
don't know who all, I don't have it in front of me.
Right, so Taylor Caswell, Frank Edelblut, I don't know what Dr. Chan's first name
Benjamin
is.
Chan.
Benjamin. Yep.
Dr. Benjamin, and I'd have to look up Director
Right,
Buxton.
and we can say in many others who we did not have the opportunity to hear from, but certainly were in the trenches or something like that. I mean, I think they all really knocked themselves out.
Right, and I think, and many other citizens who provided valuable, right, so I think, and I think they were all recognized at the beginning too, so I think, but these were the people that came and testified before our committee specifically. Representative Polzoff.
I have a question to the committee. So I think most of us heard about the Swiss cheese model here for the first time. So if we here characterize it as a well-known risk mitigation approach for hazard prevention, is it actually well-known or not?
Just a thought, maybe we could have, a footnote at the bottom or something that talks what Swiss cheese method and what that meant, just so okay, thank
Well, or maybe just not call it that, call it a variety of mitigation measures or something like that. And just, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, so.
We're just quoting,
Right,
Associate Commissioner, Tilly, that
So-
she said that several times.
several times, so you can.
So, Representative Weary.
Dr. Chan also mentioned it several times. And as someone with a long history in quality and regulatory in the pharmaceutical and biotech and medical device industries, I've been familiar with this for a long, long time. And so we constantly use that sort of model when talking about risks, aseptic processing, sterile processing, other scenarios like that. So it is well known, at least in some industries, and I think in the fields, like the Dr. Chan would frequent, it should be familiar. So
Okay, so maybe a footnote, just so would people understand what that meant. Thank you. Please.
I did provide an explanation of it. So if you go, the text now has that explanation. So I thought there was another instance where, say, the R naught value was discussed, and so I explained that. I explained the Swiss cheese model, so that I felt those two and maybe one other thing that doesn't come to mind right at the moment needed a general explanation of a technical matter, and so I provided that in my version of the report.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Go ahead, Representative Bell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm currently on page 22 of 33 of the updated, the edited version.
I'm on page 6.
I just wanted to chime in and say, thus far, I am generally in agreement that it makes it a little bit easier to read. It adds some good information that is good. Thus far, I would not have a problem with changing it to this version, maybe reformatting a little bit, but I think it's pretty good.
Thank you for that. Okay. I'm scrolling here, right? So, go ahead, Representative Weary.
Yeah, just I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but just for the record, there's probably about 8 to 10 hours of editing in here. So just so people are aware, I didn't casually look at this and blah blah blah. I really tried to go through it and provide some I think, style and content updates to the excellent work that Representative Belker had already provided.
I wonder if it would make sense, so that we're all dealing with your document, if we could ask House Committee Services to just make a copy for us. Because I don't,
Send that right up there. I'll send that right up.
and then I think that way we know, we all are looking at the same thing.
Okay. Here we go.
Otherwise, it's really hard.
Yes, and I would tend to agree with that. And seeing knowing the original draft, obviously, and seeing the level of changes that were made, almost every single sentence in here has at least small changes and improvements, I think. So it would be almost impossible to go through it as a side by side and say this is what changed. It would be better just to deal with the edited version, I think.
But Representative Belker and I were discussing this briefly earlier prior to the committee's convening, and I'm not as loquacious as Representative Belker, so my sentences are a little shorter generally.
Thank you. No offense, but I like short and concise.
No offense.
I'm a
taken.
business writer, not a
It'll be
English.
somewhat difficult for me, because now the rest of my folks haven't necessarily seen this draft, but, you know, we'll do the best we can do.
May I? And just to help comment a little bit on that, where I'm at, I'm now on page 23. The changes are overwhelmingly stylistic and grammatical, and taking my overwhelmingly philosophical style of writing and transforming it into a more technical style of writing. But the content is very similar.
If I
Why don't we take a 15-minute 10-minute recess until 10:55? It's recess. I'd like to call us back in to reconvene. It is now 10:55. So, and I'd like to thank Representative Ebel for going and getting these new reports so that we can look at them. Thank you. And Representative Wary, if you have anything, want to go over anything specific, you have the floor.
Let's see. So, in the summary of findings, so this would be page 6. So
So we have them, we have now both documents, right? So maybe if we have them side by side, if there's anything in particular you want to point out, you can't point out everything. We also have them next to each other, if that helps.
On your computer, do you have where you change things? I mean, I already see that there's a formatting change on some of it. You know, with bullet points and things. I can already see that. Please, Representative Belcher.
Apologies, Madam Chair. I seem to have two copies of the same document. Is that what we're supposed to be looking at?
Well, I had printed out a copy of yours and brought it with me. And then we have a copy of Representative Wary's. And I believe Representative Ebel printed out a copy of your report also. So that we brought from home. But please, go ahead.
Just to clarify, because what I'm looking at are exactly identical. I think these are both the edited version by Representative Weary.
You might end up with 2 copies of that, but
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
we made 6 copies of the old version, unless did she print out the wrong thing?
No, she printed out the right thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. An extra copy of that. So you have both. You have the extra copy. So
Got it.
I don't know why I was thinking 6, but whatever.
So should I continue with the summary of findings? So basically, I brought out the I sort of relabeled the Representative Belker introduced that there were kind of 3 primary objectives. I sort of relabeled the second one because it was I think it was based, and I did this based on Dr. Chan's discussion or testimony, because he talked about a genuine concern about the healthcare system and infrastructure being overwhelmed. And so slow the spread was the slogan, or stop the spread, or that sort of thing. 2 weeks to stop the spread or slow the spread. But the purpose or objective was really to prevent the healthcare system and infrastructure from being overwhelmed. So, and then I thought it was helpful in this particular instance to really call them out as individual, bullet points or numbered points. So, so I did that, and then a lot of what is there in like the paragraph with that starts out the first major goal is basically takes the same content but just rewords it in for readability. The paragraph on analysis of the efficacy of the response toward the bottom of page 6 is basically, again, the same with a few minor rewords. The paragraph that starts with the second goal is then, that is a more substantive change, because I thought it was important to explain that the concern about the overwhelming of the healthcare system. And so that information is amplified and added to a degree. And I built it in terms of a sequential series of thoughts to kind of better explain why this was a concern, and then talked about some of the points that Representative Belker raised, but for instance, I labeled the approach to gain additional time to improve treatments as sort of a secondary benefit, but the primary interest or purpose or goal or objective was indeed to prevent the healthcare system from being overwhelmed, because the thought process was, as I remember, at least more recently from the testimony from Dr. Chan, was that there was a very much a concern that if this healthcare system was overwhelmed and was unable to help anyone at that point because of a collapse of the healthcare system, then you have the catastrophe of the healthcare infrastructure being collapsing on top of the virus pandemic. So that's then explained. You then have starting at the top of page 7, well, that's a continue paragraph, but then I broke out the aspects of the federal level versus state level, and in the paragraph that says at the federal level. Then in the next one, that starts representatives of the Department of Health and Human Services describe the Swiss cheese model. There, in that particular paragraph, I went into some great detail about what that analogy means, and so that the reader could better understand that. Then in the final paragraph at the bottom of page 7, that is basically the same sort of content, but largely reworded. And then there were also some sections that probably were taken out at that point.
Just a quick note, and I
Yes.
think this is what everyone was pointing to on page 6, was in the paragraph that says representatives, at the very end of it, it says accordingly this committee. So whatever you were thinking at that point is not there, and I believe Representative Ebel wanted to make a comment.
Answer that. Did you drop a sentence, or it's just a weird paragraph?
Let me give me just a moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, while you're looking, I guess, so I'm looking at this and I'm trying to figure out what is the specific finding. So you have goal 1, and I think the finding here is basically if the goal was to halt the spread of the virus, the objective was not achieved by the state. And it
Correct.
says here, the committee received no information or testimony that would lead us to believe that even a single resident of the state was spared infection since it first appeared in New Hampshire. Is that your finding?
I believe that is almost a direct quote from the
Right,
original report.
right. So that's what, I mean, all I'm saying, I'm trying to, there's the building of the argument and then there's the finding. So I think that's the finding, the summary of the finding for the first goal. So I wanted to make sure that that was the finding, and then wherever, I mean, I haven't read it all. We can find your specific finding or findings for the second goal. Here we go. I see.
So I think the finding to the second goal really begins at the top of page 9, or toward the top of page 9, maybe the first or second paragraph, because then the lastly in the middle of page 9 really begins the discussion of the third point. And that sort of follows Representative Belker's wording, and I kept that wording, but tried to, because it's one of the longer sections of the report, I tried to kind of keep with the first, second, and third, but introduce it as numbered points above to help people be able to clarify that.
Okay, sorry. Just,
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just help to summarize a little bit what we're discussing, especially for anybody who might be watching at home. We're looking at the summary of findings regarding the efficacy of the government response. Now, in order to determine whether or not the government response was efficacious, whether it worked, you first have to identify what the goal was. So we've identified, rather I and Representative Weary and his edit have identified several items that were repeatedly testified to us that represented goals during different points in the pandemic. The first goal being that there was an attempt being made to not merely mitigate, but really eliminate the spread of COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, in an attempt to actually not allow it to become endemic or native to the population. So that was goal number one. As Dr. Chan testified to in a very direct question on this, it fairly quickly, within a couple months, it seems, became apparent to the authorities involved that this was no longer something reasonable to try to achieve. And the goal began shifting to a mitigation strategy in order to try to avoid, there was several reasons that were given, to try to avoid overwhelming our healthcare capacity and system, and to bide time for the further development of therapeutics, prophylactics, and such, in order to ultimately have the effect of reducing morbidity and mortality of infection. So those are the kind of overriding goals that were identified, and then the rest goes on to analyze, based on testimony and data we've received, what that looked like and whether or not it ultimately worked, which in many cases it does not appear to have. At the very least, we can say that there wasn't evidence presented to us in any sort of data format that could identify any particular measure that we took that actually was effective in meeting those goals.
Okay, it's going to take a little bit for us to go through this and read it again. He said that on page 9 where it said lastly, that would be the third point.
okay, I just wondered what the related findings for the third.
The third point. Okay, let's see. So what Representative Ebel is asking is that the third goal that was stated, we know that it starts on page 9 on what we must examine, but where was the committee's findings on that? Exactly.
I think that is I so recommendations begin at the bottom of page 10. The top or the bottom two paragraphs are where it states like the committee recommends.
I see where it says the committee recommends further investigation, second paragraph from the bottom.
Yeah,
Page
exactly.
10.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
those would be, I think, sort of the findings. There's some, I really believe the paragraph above those two is still a discussion of, the conflicting data that the committee or well, not all conflicting data, but just concerns expressed, particularly as I remember it, from citizens who experienced adverse reactions from the vaccines and that sort of thing. So I think that's what that paragraph speaks to. And then as indicated, the committee recommends those two paragraphs below that provide, sort of the findings and recommendations for the committee.
It's just not exactly a finding, but whatever. I mean, like on 9, we say it's the finding of the committee that blah, blah, blah. On 7, I think or 6, we had a finding for the first goal. So I just thought maybe calling it out a little bit more specifically and building the recommendation from there. I should say I don't want to imply that I necessarily agree with this assessment. It's just my thought on how it lays out.
Thank you for that. Representative Belcher.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify because I know at least some of this is sort of my original language. So when we're discussing findings, and perhaps to my fault, I shouldn't have used the word finding once or twice in the context that I did, because it implies that that was perhaps our only finding, where in reality, everything after the paragraph that says lastly, this was the goal, everything after that constitutes a finding, with the sort of highlighted finding being something that was sort of an overriding finding of the committee leading into recommendations.
Okay. So this is going to be a long process. I know some of us would like to hear more about what it is. I know there's going to be need more discussions about this report, and that we will need another meeting. So I guess I'd like to ask Representative Ebel, once this report has now been sent to the entire committee, so everyone on the committee now has this in their email. What kind of time do you need to look at it, go over it, etc.? And we'd like to hear what your suggestions are.
Thanks. Well, I guess my first question would be, in this revision, Representative Weary, did you actually change any of the conclusions? Is there anything really different in here other than revising and amplifying and the original document?
No, I really didn't. I think I would say with one possible exception, as I brought out the impact during the discussion of the impact on the educational system, I brought out the impact on early childhood development and socialization that mass and school closures had on children. We heard that a few times, and both from experts and concerned citizens, and our own Representative Lekes, who has a lot of experience in that area. And so I think from that aspect, it may have been mentioned briefly, but I brought that out in particular. As I said, I think I changed really the second point from an emphasis on slow the spread to really teasing out more the aspects of preventing the healthcare system from being overwhelmed. And then the rest, and as I said perhaps earlier, I did try to explain some of the technical aspects of the Swiss cheese model, the R naught value, and I think there was one other thing, but I don't really remember it offhand. But to really kind of fundamentally answer your question, no, I did not change the conclusions or the findings or the conclusions of the report. It's a lot of this was really I think stylistic and just, for readability, and then to also to, part of readability, meaning explaining some of the technical concepts as we came across them in the report. And then um, I think in some cases, just maybe rearranging some thoughts to for the purposes of conciseness. I think, but so there was a lot of stylistic editing, but not, quite frankly, very much content-wise.
Okay. Um, So to answer your question, I don't quite know how to move ahead on it. I think that if the content really is not changed and the findings and the conclusions are not really changed, I don't think the position of our members will change. So the alternative would be for us to provide a statement to that effect that could be included in the report. I mean, and whether that requires a whole other meeting, or if we meet and then I just bring that in, I mean, or if I email it to you, I mean, I think that's basically where we stand.
Okay. Representative Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And would it be possible to call a brief 5-minute caucus on the topic just to make sure we're
Sure,
all
of
on the same
course.
page?
I'll go caucus with myself.
Sorry, Representative Evil, but we'll 11:25. We'll take a brief recess till 11:25. Thank you. It is now 11:25. I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Couple things. I think that we should give the other committee members a chance to review the edited version. I think out of respect for everyone's time. I think that's important. If we want to have more discussion about this today, we can, or we can, I'll schedule another meeting for the week of the 11th, and my availability, I was thinking, let me just check my calendar again because we are in busy times. But Wednesday, November 13th, I have some things scheduled in the afternoon, but I could be here at 9 in the morning. I know that's early for some of us, but I didn't know if that was doable because I have some traveling and some other things going on that week that I have to take care of. So I just want to throw that out there. So I believe that is the 13th at 9 a.m. And I just want to throw that out and see what everyone thinks about that. Representative Bell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that would be acceptable and good. I wanted to ask, would we like to extend, as was requested, the opportunity to draft a statement that we could receive preferably before that, and then also discuss that day from the Democratic members?
Unfortunately, I'm on a panel that morning from 9:45 to 10:30. So I don't know what to say, and I'm away the 14th and 15th. I mean, the only other thing is if you want to schedule it, to tell you the truth, other people may be able to come. I'm thinking about this. Other people may be able to come, or alternatively, if they can't, we would provide you either with a statement or something for that day.
Okay. All right.
It's okay.
Okay.
I mean, it
I'm
feels weird
just
to agree to a meeting when I know that I can't come, but I perhaps Representative
merchants available.
Merchant or Representative Grota will be able to come. And at that point, we'll have put together what I will assume will be a relatively brief statement. And then you can just, add it to the report.
Okay. Okay. So, what I was
Madam Chair.
thinking, Representative Polzoff.
I wonder if anyone, personally, I'm also available on Tuesday 12th, and also Representative Belcher wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to recommend perhaps that if Representative Ebel is available at 10:30 that morning, if we wanted to plan to convene at 9, having a statement and our report, which, by the way, because there are a few minor changes and Representative Wary has expressed that he is very busy given us some personal circumstances. What I can do is I can just go make the few modifications to the edited version to make sure that there aren't sentence fragments. And have that also available prior to going in. That way we can discuss it for a little bit, knowing that Representative Ebel will be able to be here approximately 10:30
I'm
or
on the
so.
panel, and it's the NRRA, I don't know, it's a trash thing. I'm on a panel, so I'm going to be in Epsom, and it ends up at 11, and it's an in-person thing. So I think it's going to be hard.
Understood.
I appreciate that, but I think I can't get here in the morning.
Yeah, she won't be able to be here because she's going to be in my neck of the woods.
Yeah. I'm going to be over in Epsom, so it'd be really hard. I mean, if I was in Concord or if it was a Zoom or something,
Right.
I'd do the Zoom here and then just pop in. But,
Right. So,
I don't,
Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, in that case, perhaps I could recommend that we just make sure we have at least one Democratic member here, if either one of them who's here, or if you
Yeah,
want to
we'll
name
make
somebody
sure-
to introduce at least to introduce the statement, and that way we can discuss it
Yeah.
and move forward.
And, it'll be our statement, so whatever it says, it says. And so, did you say there's gonna be a few more tweaks to Representative Weary's draft? So then you'll redistribute it to
Yes,
the
and I'll
committee?
do that. And it's not going to be serious, content changes or anything. There's just a few little sentence fragments or something, like a paragraph that ended on a.
I also
words.
believe that Representative Wary right now, he's going through a tough personal time right now. We'll have time maybe later next week to go over some things too. And so I'd like to, out of respect for him, I would like to give him some time to do that.
Sure.
Representative Wary.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Yeah. My father passed away this past Thursday, a week ago, and I think after this next week, I think I'll be able to address things, and perhaps Representative Belcher and I can meet and and iron out the any wordsmithing, or things that need to be clarified. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the passing of my mother died 2 years ago at exactly this time, and it's still tough. Could I suggest when you guys do it, if you could do some appendices that sort of outlined specifically who your witnesses are, and maybe just a list of your key documents? I mean, the way this is going to work out, it's going to be a document that lives online under our committee. So you could do some hyperlinks in it to some of the key, not everything, but some of the stuff that you found particularly persuasive in developing your findings.
If for example, we had a link to a particular testimony, and then had underneath that some of the major topics that witness testified to. So rather than trying to provide links throughout the report to Mr. Representative Belcher's
Just
earlier statement,
something.
I think that
Yeah.
might be useful.
I mean, honestly, I think it would also give more oomph to your document. And anyway,
So just so you know, if you go onto our website and you see our standing committee, then it says at the bottom, it says committee links. And we do have on here, like the after action report is already there. I believe Representative Alicia's comments, her testimony is there, her written statement. And we have a few other documents. If anyone thinks of any other documents that needs to be uploaded onto this, let me know and we can ask Jamie to do that for us. Please, Representative Belcher. Representative Polozov had something first.
I just want to agree with what Representative Abels said. And I understand that 12 days, it seems a lot, and maybe we won't have enough time to put every link, but as much documentation as we can provide in the report, it will be really helpful for those who will be dealing with it in future.
Representative Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just on that topic of what's currently on the website, and what needs to be there, and references in the report, I think we can do some work to make some references that are appropriate where possible. The references may be extraordinarily broad, given how much I myself have introduced probably several dozen or more documents, not including the totality of executive and emergency orders that were issued during the pandemic. So if the request is to have some hyperlinks that will reference what is already in the report, to substantiate findings and claims, we're, if possible, going to need the entirety of documents that have been introduced into the committee through these previous emails to be uploaded and hyperlinked under our committee website.
I mean, I think you can just feel your way along. I mean, even like for Dr. Jordan Vaughn, you could put his name and you could put a link to his website or something. I mean, just some things like that. I do think on the executive orders, I agree with you. That's really important. We should have something on that. I would bet that there may be a place living on the governor's website that you can find those executive orders. And to some extent, you know, the committee researcher may be able to help you with this. I also want to make sure, stating the obvious, that the link for the committee is in the document, if you know what I'm saying. I don't see it right now, but we want to give a link to where all our stuff is. But I do think it's important that we have an appendix that lists the witnesses. And you can give a link to their organization if you want. And I mean, I would think the researcher could help you with that too.
I think that's a very good idea. So thank you very much. Anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss? I think, does everyone agree on appendix? Making sure we get everything up on the, into our website, et cetera. And I will reach out to our researcher and ask her to, you know, link some of the things, and maybe she can link like even the Homeland Security Homeland Security report. And I think the COVID timeline report is especially important to be up there. Right, so that after action report, right? So those items I think would be important to have on our website also. They'll live in two places, but redundancy is not a bad thing sometimes.
Because sometimes people are just going to be looking at the report. So the only other thing, and maybe I missed it, part of our charge was the issue of dissemination of federal funds. That's what Commissioner Caswell had talked about. Is that in here in some way? I mean,
If I may, on that one, when I was writing it, I didn't do a deep dive into it, frankly, just because the executive has already done and provided a deep dive into it. So I think if we wanted to
maybe we could
simply
reference
reference their work, which is quite extensive on that, I think we don't need to duplicate that effort.
yeah, I mean, I think that just because it was part of our charge, I think if you reference that in some way, that would be helpful.
Anything else? I mean, this is all good stuff. So, you know, we want to make sure that all the information is available to everyone that we heard and saw. So, okay. So I guess, what did I say? November 13th at 9 a.m. Okay. Great.
So is the idea that the final blessing of the report will be on that day and we'll bring our happy crew to a conclusion?
Yes, please.
I don't know about November the 13th. I don't know.
It's a Wednesday,
Yeah,
though.
okay.
It's
a
a Wednesday.
Friday.
It's
All
not a
right.
Friday.
I'm glad somebody's as superstitious as I am. Anyway.
I find them to be very good days, unfortunately.
Wow.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Everyone, have a great weekend. I don't know if everyone's on the ballot next time, but good luck to everyone who is. And I'll see not everyone on the 13th. And I wish you on the other side. Yes. And good luck at your meeting on the 13th.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. We'll be adjourned at 11:39. Thank you.